Hey everyone, this is Nitro from the Rocky Valley server in the Guild Snow. So in this video, I am going to talk all about Leon, the mightiest knight, and how to make him the mightiest knight. So, just a quick note, Leon is so powerful that the Chinese players have really nicknamed this game Langrisser because of how versatile and just how strong Leon is and how required he is for so much of the endgame content. I mean, you could do endgame content without Leon, but if you have Leon, you can just clear it much earlier than you could without him. So, with all that said, let's talk about him. First, we will begin with Leon's talent. And his talent is really interesting. It's called Epic Knight, and for every block he moves, he does more damage. In addition, his defense will also increase. So in my case, at 5 stars, my damage is increased by 3% and defense increased by 15% per tile that he moves. So if I move 5 tiles, my damage is up 15%, defense is up 75%, which is just a huge buff on both his damage and his defense. So in addition to that, he can also move 3 blocks after he attacks. So he has the ability to attack and retreat, which not very many heroes have. So this combination, this talent makes Leon the kind of unit that can actually charge enemy melee characters and come out on top while taking very little damage. So yeah, this is Epic Knight. The skill is just amazing, okay? In addition to that, let's just begin by talking about his classes. So, you can see with my Leon, I have Knight, I have Grand Knight, and Strike Master. I have Highlander, but I never actually picked up Royal Knight. My personal opinion is you absolutely need the Grand Knight and Strike Master path first. Highlander and Royal Knight are nice to have, but they're not absolutely required. And the reason for this is because Strike Master has the skill Chivalry. In many ways, this skill, it really acts like a faction buff. It only lasts 2 turns as opposed to 4 turns, so it's not as long lasting as a faction buff. However, this skill actually, it's arguably better than a faction buff in many ways. First, it increases your attack value by 30%. Faction buffs only do 20%. Second, it grants blast and reinforcement and grants immunity to debuffs. So the turn he uses it, he is immune to all debuffs. So any counterattack made on Leon won't apply any kind of debuff to him. And reinforcement allows him to heal 20% of his hit points. Blast, from what I remember, what Blast does is it decreases the amount of damage he takes by 30% as well. So yeah, I mean, he's taking less damage, he's doing way more damage, and he heals up. So this skill is just, yeah, this skill is just ridiculous. In addition, when you cast it, you can move another 3 blocks in attack. So basically, it means Leon can attack any target 8 tiles away from him. Not just 5 of any other cavalry, but 8. So yeah, overall, this skill is just, it's Leon's best skill in many ways. Just a quick note about Chivalry. When you use it, it's actually considered 1 turn. So let's say you have, I don't know, let's say you have a Tiaris buff, like Attack Blessing, okay? If someone uses Attack Blessing on Leon, and then Leon uses Chivalry, Attack's Blessing, which lasts for 2 turns, it will actually only last for 1 turn, because Chivalry is considered 1 turn. You attack, and then that buff is gone. So there is that disadvantage to using Chivalry. In addition, the other thing about Chivalry is it does not stack at all with faction buff. So let's say Leon's been faction buffed. If you use Chivalry after that, the faction buff plus 20% attack is replaced by this plus 30% attack of Chivalry. And since Chivalry only lasts 2 turns, you're going to be without the attack buff for quite some time. So that's just two things to be aware of about Chivalry. So, other than Strike Master, in addition to that, okay, Strike Master also unlocks the Smash skill when you go into Grand Knight, and Smash is quite useful in several battles. The most obvious character that Smash is useful against is actually, for example, dragons. And that's because it applies that minus 20% defense to the target. And it does 1.4 times the damage, physical damage, okay? So, in that case, yeah, Smash can be surprisingly useful because it decreases the defense of a dragon by 20%, so that other targets can benefit from that. Leon, as a quick note, his starting skill is Assault. And Assault makes it so the target that's attacked cannot be healed. And it lasts 1 turn. And if you're moving multiple tiles, if you move 3 tiles, for each tile it gets 20% increase in the damage dealt. So this is considered, I guess, 1.6 times damage. So Assault is great against, let's say, Aniki Adon, because Adon has a infantry healing skill. So he has a skill that heals himself. Using Assault would prevent that healing and allow you to finish up, do more damage to him next turn and potentially finish him off. So that pretty much covers everything about the Strike Master path. Next is, I guess we can talk about Swordsman briefly, and really, you won't use Crush, even if you pick the Swordsman's class. If you get it, it would be purely for the class mastery. And Swordsman gives 5 skill and 80 hit points. In my opinion, Swordsman is not worth it. Unless you somehow have lots of spare runestones, and at the current stage of the game, nobody has spare runestones. All your characters want their double class, their 2 main classes unlocked fully. So there's no way anyone can spare, an extra runestone to unlock their Swordsman class. That 80 hit points and 5 skill is just not worth the runestone. So, just so you're aware. So finally, let's talk about Highlander and Royal Knights. Highlander's passive, it's not worth it. Because there's only a 50% chance of it occurring, and it just reduces the enemy's attack and defense by 20%. So I guess you can say it prevents you from taking damage, but I just can't think of any situation where you would actually need this. Unless, well, there is one, let's be fair. If you're fighting dragons and you don't have any way to apply the attack debuff, then attack break might be useful. But again, if you're doing that, you're giving up Legion, which increases your attack and defense by 10%. So that's why I don't think this skill is really ever worth it. Because you're giving up attack and defense to decrease the enemy's attack value. So let's continue then. So Highlander, skill isn't really great. I've never seen a use for this attack break skill at all. Finally, let's talk about Royal Knight. Royal Knight gives Leon the Imperial Charge skill, which is a faction buff. And in all honesty, you don't want a faction buff on Leon because he's your main physical attacker. Why would you ever want your physical attacker to do something like faction buffing? You should really have another character do the faction buff so that Leon can benefit from it while Leon continues to attack endlessly. So as a whole, this faction buff is just not worth it. If you wanted to buff himself, just bring Chivalry. Don't ever bring a faction buff for him. And there's a whole bunch of other characters who can do the faction buff instead. For example, even Lance, I believe, the starting flyer that you have, Lance has a faction buff. Let's bring him up quickly. If you leveled up Lance, right, he has Imperial Blaze to do a faction buff for Empire characters. Bernhard has a faction buff. If you don't have Bernhard, then yeah, you might, then it's too bad. But everybody has Lance for sure. If you need a faction buff, bring Lance. Don't have Leon do a faction buff. And finally, the other skill in the Royal Knight branch is Thousand Hooves. And Thousand Hooves is incredibly important. It's Leon's best attack skill. has the highest damage output at 1.7 times damage. It applies enemy mobility decrease and makes them unable to guard, and this cannot be dispelled. So the debuff itself is also great. The disadvantage is, of course, the cooldown is 5 turns. So it is pretty hard to deal with. So with Leon, you actually definitely do use all 3 of his attack skills. You know, 1000 Hooves is great. Assault is great. Smash is great as well. All 3 attack skills have their uses in different scenarios. So that covers all of Leon's classes and all of his skills. You can see this is my usual setup, which is Legion, Chivalry, and Assault. I sometimes switch up Assault for Smash, and I hope to eventually have access to 1000 Hooves so I can throw it in here. But I feel Chivalry is a must, I feel Legion is a must. The 3rd skill is any of the attack skills. Alright, so that covers his classes in great detail as well as all of his skills. Let's talk about Leon's soldiers. Leon is actually very versatile when it comes to his soldiers. You definitely want Angels, which are from the training ground. And Angels are great because they take less magic, they reduce the magic damage that's dealt to him. So it's reduced, in my case, at their current level, they reduce it by 30%. And in addition, when the soldier hit point is above 50%, attack and defense is increased by 12%. So it really means Angels are the hardest hitting of the units he has access to, and they take less magic damage. So Angels are a great go-to unit for him. You unlock them from the training ground, so you can get them early too. But other than Angels, what people normally use is Vampire Bats. And Vampire Bats, unlike Angels, they are not particularly strong against magic attacks. However, their advantage is when you attack with them, they restore a certain percentage of their hit points after the battle. This is actually really, really useful because it keeps Leon and his soldiers at full health after he attacks. I frequently tend to use Vampire Bats against most things in the current state, in my current level, but I will switch to Angels against, let's say, the Ice Dragon. And the reason for that is because I'm finding Vampire Bats actually hit for very similar attack as Angels at this current time. So I'm just going to quickly open my training ground and just show the levels of my Vampire Bats and Angels. So, let's see. Angels are level 6, Vampire Bats are level 5, and yet they have similar damage performance right now. My understanding is by level 10, Angels are blatantly better because the attack and defense bonus just keeps increasing, right? 12, 14, I believe it goes up to 20% increase. So when it hits 20% increase, obviously the Angels will hit way harder and take less damage because they have higher attack and defense. However, the Vampire Bats right now, they do similar attack damage and they self-heal. So in a lot of maps, this self-healing ability is better than the Angels who don't self-heal. So that's really all about Leon's soldiers. I mean, before you have access to Angels, you'll just be using his cavalry units. You know, whatever he has access to. Like Bone Dinos and Lesser Imps, and then probably just the bone... What are these called? Horn Dinos, and then Bone Dinos. Okay, so that's the units you're probably going to be using until you unlock Angels, and then you'll use Angels, and then when you unlock Vampire Bats, you'll probably switch to Vampire Bats, and use Angels for certain fights. So yeah, that pretty much covers his soldiers. There's no other units that you really use other than those. And alright, let's now talk about his equipment. And the equipment I have on Leon right now is the equipment you should level up when you first get Leon. Right? You get Last Night really early. So yeah, like almost from the start, he'll be using the Last Night weapon. In terms of armor, his best SR is Mithril Armor because that increases his defense percentage. And by increasing his defense percentage, Epic Knight will give more of a defense bonus. For helmet, you use Horror Helm. And I'll talk about this briefly afterwards. And finally for Assault, for the ring, You use the assault ring because it gives a plus attack and plus defense, and it has a plus attack percentage. Okay. You do want to replace this. If you get an SSR accessory that gives plus attack plus hit points, that's probably actually better than the assault ring for him. But yeah, this is a very solid addition. Again, it gives attack and defense, so again, it helps Epic Knight. So now I'll quickly talk about why Horror Helm is the best helmet for Leon. So whenever after you take an action, there is a 50% chance to decrease the defense of one enemy within 2 blocks by 20%, right? The most important thing about this is it works with Chivalry. So if you move your Leon within 2 tiles of the enemy and then use Chivalry, then there is a chance that they get a debuff on their defense. So that's why Horror Helm is so useful. Just as a quick note, Assault does not really work well when you rely on the Horror Helm like this, because then you're doing 20% less damage. By putting yourself 2 tiles away, then you can only move 1 tile into attack. Then Assault only does 20% additional damage. So in that case, Smash might be better because it does 1.4 damage. And ideally it would just be Thousand Hooves, because that's a guaranteed 1.7 times damage. But Horror Helm, this is the reason why you use it, because of Chivalry. And the other, so that's pretty much his starting equipment, and you can see I'm still using what is essentially his starting equipment. So let's talk then about Leon's endgame equipment, which really should be the final thing that's covered in this video. I'm going to bring up this Google spreadsheet that shows all the SSRs. So just bear with me for a moment. Let's see. Alright, here we go. So, Leon's final weapon. Most people think that his final weapon should be the blue star, because the blue star gives, 85 attack, 582 hit points, and for every block moved, you increase your attack, defense, and magic defense by 5%, up to 15%. So this would stack very well with a lot of Leon's skills. Chivalry, right? For example, you would move 3 blocks, which means plus 15% attack, defense, and magic defense. It would also stack with his talent, for example, and yeah, that's why everyone thinks blue star is his best final weapon. However, in many ways, it's not the ideal thing for him. And the reason for that is twofold. First, this benefit only applies to attack. So when you're attacking, you're getting this plus 15% boost. But when you're defending, you're getting no bonus at all. Okay? The other reason that blue star is actually not the best weapon for Leon is because while it gives a lot of hit points, it actually doesn't give that much attack, 85 attack. So the weapon that's actually considered better for Leon is actually, believe it or not, Seal Guardian, the sword. Because Seal Guardian, it does give less hit points, 436 as opposed to 582. But the attack value is increased by 107 as opposed to 85. And Seal Guardian gives a permanent plus 10% attack plus 5% defense boost. So yes, it is, I guess, 5% less attack value than the blue star, but despite that, Seal Guardian is considered better than blue star because it applies if Leon is attacked, and it also applies, and it doesn't require you to move a full 3 distance to get the boost. So yeah, that pretty much covers his best weapons. I mean, you're not going wrong if you use blue star for his final weapon, but Seal Guardian does seem to be the better option overall. So that's Leon's final SSR weapon. Next, SSR armor. And in terms of SSR armors, in all honesty, of all these ones above, you can't go wrong with using almost any of them. Okay, they're all useful. They're all better than using the mithril armor that I'm currently using. However, if you had to choose one, it would probably be one of these two in the middle, which is Aeolus's battle armor or Bloodline magic armor. So Aeolus's battle armor is when you're attacked by a range attack, 30% chance to reduce damage taken by 30%. So because range attacks include magic damage, this reduces one of the big vulnerabilities that Leon has. And remember, this also stacks with Leon having angels. So it can really reduce the amount of damage he takes, potentially. Bloodline magic armor has its use because when you're attacked with a melee attack, it reduces the damage just like Aeolus's battle armor, except it's for melee attacks better than ranged attacks. Now, I personally don't think Bloodline magic armor is the best for Leon because normally, because Leon has attack and retreat due to his talent, you're generally in the range of being protected by your tank. In that case, you're more likely to take damage from range attacks than you are from melee attacks. So given that's the case, it only makes sense to equip Aeolus's battle armor in general. So I hope that makes a lot of sense, and that's why my personal opinion is Aeolus's battle armor is the best armor for Leon. So, after that, let's move on to helms. And Leon, he's actually surprisingly versatile when it comes to helms. I think what's considered the best for him is the vampire mask, and the vampire mask is basically identical to the Reaper's helm that he has. Or sorry, not Reaper's helm, the horror helmet that he has. What it does is, after action, 50% chance to decrease a random enemy's defense by 20% within 2 blocks for 1 turn. That is the exact same as the horror helmet. It does have another effect though, of increasing Leon's defense by 10%, which really helps him because of his talent, increasing his defense. So that's why Vampire Mask is really considered the best helmet for him. You know, he gets higher defense, which helps him tank attacks, and he continues to have the horror helmet skill of reducing enemy defense so that he can do more damage. Another helmet that he can use is, believe it or not, Reaper's Breath. And Reaper's Breath is actually more of a player versus player helmet than it is PvE content. So what it does is, after killing an enemy this turn, it deals fixed damage once to enemies next turn within 2 blocks. So what that means is, if you kill an enemy, right, and you stay within 2 blocks of another enemy, it gets a debuff where they'll take a lot of damage the following turn. So what that really means is they need to remove this debuff, or else their other character will take a bunch of damage. So Reaper's Breath can actually work on Leon because Leon very frequently one-shots targets, even in PvP. So by one-shotting a target, you can apply a debuff on another one where they're taking more damage. So it's very simple, straightforward, and it works. So Reaper's Breath could be considered a secondary helmet, which is more PvP focused for Leon. And last but not least, let's talk about the SSR accessories. For SSR accessories, in all honesty, any accessory that increases physical attack works for Leon. One that's very useful and that you get for free is winged shin guards. And you get one for free when you hit level 60. I haven't hit level 60 yet. I don't have my winged shin guards yet, so that's why my Leon is still using the assault ring. But winged shin guards is a great accessory for him. It increases his attack, it increases his defense, so that affects his talent. And the effects are when he gets an 8% attack increase all the time, and when he's attacked, his defense increases by 10%. So winged shin guards, just a great accessory for Leon. Other ones that can work, you know, Overlord badge, giving immunity to attack, intelligence, defense, magic defense down, and mobility down. For him, it's more the attack down than anything else, as well as the defense down. But that works for him too. The Overlord badge though does increase hit points and attack as opposed to attack and defense, so his talent doesn't get as much boost from that. But the flip side is, the Overlord badge also gives all stats plus 5%, so that helps. Yeah, but literally, any of these accessories for physical attack, they're all great for Leon. As long as you get one, you know, Leon should probably get one of them right away, because he's your main physical attacker. But in the end, if you had to settle for just one of these, and you have access to all of them, I would say the best one is actually Slayer's Emblem. And it's considered the best because, not because it's the best in general, but it's probably the best because of PvP. The effect of Slayer's Emblem is when against flyers, attack increases by 12%. In PvP, flyers are very, very common. Almost everyone is running a Leon with angels or vampire bats, or they have a cherry. So as long as you're facing any flyer, right, you're doing extra damage against them. So that's what makes Slayer's Emblem the best for Leon, despite it providing hit points in attack as opposed to defense in attack. So yeah, that pretty much covers all the equipment for Leon. I mean, again, let's just quickly mention it. All these accessories could work with Leon. For example, even Elven Ring. When attacking, you get an additional attack and defense. Stacks with his talent. So that would be great for him as well. Lone Star Amulet. When no allies are within 2 blocks, attack and defense up 10%. Generally, when you're attacking, you're charging forward and using chivalry. So you're far away from your allies. So this would work for him too. You know? So like, literally all of these really, they work for Leon. It's just, yeah, at the end it's just, the first one you get that gives plus attack, give it to Leon. That sums it up best. You know, eventually you might want to level up the Slayer's Emblem for him, but the priority is to get a level 50 accessory that is SSR for Leon to use. So that covers everything about I wanted to say about Leon. If you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. And yeah, thanks for watching everyone. I hope you found this video useful. Nitro out.